My name is Nick Dawson. I'm the chair of this meeting. We'll start off with apologies. I haven't got any to start with. I'll move that the confirmation of minutes of the RCB meeting 29th November 2021 be confirmed and accurate. Tanya, are you a seconder? Thank you. We've got 10 items in our agenda today, 5 reports, and we go straight to the first report. Junior, are you there?
Hi there.
Hi, Junior.
I'm Junior from the Environmental Policy team. So the purpose of our report is to, as part of the recommendation from full council on the 14th of December 2021, it was recommended that I take this completed report to the Rural Community Board and to accept, and it's as it was accepted by full council on that date. So it's just a brief report, and it's just saying this is the requirement. It's been completed for the period of 2015 to 2019, and for the Rural Community Board to accept the proposed report and just to read it as. And if there's any questions that you have, please feel free to ask me.
Thanks, Junior. Have we got any questions from the board? No questions? Junior, it's a pretty comprehensive document. Thank you for putting it to us. I especially like the place where you put the loss of high quality rural land to residential development would in future compromise the ability of the district to support the extensive farming, horticulture and viticulture industries on which much of the community relies upon. And I think as a Rural Community Board, appreciate that in your document. But no, it's a fantastic document and well done. Who'd like to move Junior's recommendation? Thanks, Marcus. You got a seconder? Thanks, Jonathan. No more questions? You happy, Junior?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Okay, bye.
All right, Tanya.
Mr. Chair, please don't forget to put the motion so we can vote.
Oh, sorry. You're right. All 4?
Aye.
Aye. Sue, your hand up. Thank you. Any against? Okay, motion carried. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Junior.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Item 5, Rural Community Recycling Facilities. Danny, are you there? Sophie.
Can someone just remind me? I'm having trouble splitting my screen again. I did it before and now it's gone. Can someone remind me so I can have my agenda up as well? Anybody help? Tanya?
If you have the new iPad, the 3 dots at the top in the centre of your screen, tap them.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Brilliant. All getting computer savvy these days. Okay, item 5. Danny, are you there? I see you.
Yep, I'm here.
Danny, you're at the chambers, aren't you?
I am indeed, yep.
Hi, Danny. Welcome.
Thank you. Hope all are well. I'll just straight into the report. I take the report as being read. And it's basically an overview of just the sites over the Christmas New Year period, and I've put some images in there as well. Just an update as to where we've been and the behaviours that were observed and the initiatives applied over that period. As we're all aware, it's the facilities, 7 throughout the district, working really well for the community at the moment, and it's shown there was some contamination on the Waimarama, Blackbridge, and there was also a little bit out at Pokawa. I didn't really record that because it was very minor, and the resident that we sent the letter to did come forth and explain the situation and on how that contamination got into that bin. So that was nice. It was good to hear from them. With the contamination reported in Waimarama, we have been sending the images to the respective councillors just to keep them in the loop. To be fair, on the most part, it's actually been pretty good comparative to other years. And as we go forward with these reports, I'll highlight so we can keep a visual finger on the pulse, so to speak, as well. The 3rd seasonal bin out at Waimarama will be removed shortly. It's just with the weather permitting, the grass is quite wet out there, and we don't want to get the truck stuck. So once that weather does improve and that ground dries out, that third bin with the plastics and cans will be removed, and it'll revert back to a 2-bin site next to the car park there. Blackbridge has seen an increased usage from the Havelock North community, and in that increased levels of contamination, which have been monitored, and some letters have been sent to residents, with a couple of them calling in and explaining why that has happened, which again, good to hear from them. Tutera remains relatively good with no significant issues. Henderson Road continues to be good. It's a manned site, which makes it a lot easier to keep an eye on it, but there was also contamination reported. When it does get busy, the team can't keep an eye on everything, so contamination is not just limited to unmanned sites. We have looked at Waipariki, and we confirmed in previous meetings that the Waipariki trial was a success, and I'm now procuring quotes for a concrete pad to establish that as a permanent site. I've been on site with the contractors, and we've worked out the best orientation and use for site. I'll update the next meeting on where we're at with that and the actual costs that would be involved in there. There is some estimated costs there, which was again estimated. So again, we'll confirm them when we get closer to the time and quotes are in. Are there any questions on that, or is there somebody want some more detail around any particular site or subject?
Thanks, Danny. Tanya, you had your hand up first.
Thank you, Nick. Danny, first I would like to acknowledge the work that you personally do for our rural communities, and that you are out there sometimes pulling waste out of our recycling. So very much thank you from the wider community to you.
Thank you.
Another very quick question. Has there been further conversation with the Te Pahui community regarding a different site, or is that something that you'd like us to work up locally and come back to you?
No, the last conversation I had with Kitty was once they got their community group established, then she'd make contact and we could look at options from there. I think the water team did bring it to my attention that they were looking at that extra pad for more water storage. So I said, look, you use it as you need to, and we'll work around whatever. So happy to have the conversation up there. Still happy to look at a bin in that area as long as we get the right site and we can keep an eye on it. It's out of it's not in public view, if you like.
Thank you, Tanya.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Danny, I'm struggling to hear. I think it's the connection, but I'll speak to Kitty. I tend to agree with you. I think we leave the proposed site alone for the water engineers, for their plans, and we look, as a community, we look for a different site. And I'll speak to Kitty, and when they have that supported by the community, they'll come back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, good as gold. Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya. Sophie, you got a question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Hi, Danny. Yes, thank you from our community too. We're well aware of what you're doing, so I really echo Tanya's thanks. Well done, Marae Kākoho again, Jonathan. Yay for the golden stars of recycling. Waimarama's, yes, it's it continues to be a problem. I suppose what I'm really interested in is sort of when we have a bit of a look at the cost-benefit ratio of this continued contamination at Waimarama, how many bins end up at landfill, how much is actually making it to recycling. The idea to me that, ratepayers are paying for the service, doing the work to get it there, and then half of them maybe are ending up just being landfilled, which ratepayers are then paying again to the cost to landfill. So I suppose I'd like to know that we're really thinking seriously about reviewing whether or not we even have the bins. If there is actually a net positive gain for the amount of contamination and wastage that we get.
Yeah. Well, through you, Mr. Chair, in answer to your question, Sophie, nothing from Waimarama goes to landfill, recycling wise. The contamination is put on the floor at the contractors and separated out, hence those the photos that we do get. I go up there with the contractor, take photos where possible. If there's any labels on the material, we can send a letter off to that particular resident, and 50% of the time we get quite a good response back. There was a faux pas, or somebody that was visiting was thought they were doing the right thing with recycling soft plastics, which is the primary contaminant that we've had of late. But again, I must say that Waimarama has probably been the cleanest it has been for the last couple of years. So things are on the positive side of the ledger, if you like.
So just a follow-up question, Chair, if that's all right. So the one very strange situation we had with some medical waste which was a contaminated load, that was really a one-off, and that had to be disposed of, but that's not a regular event.
No, that's stopped. There's been no sign of any medical waste since that incident.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Sue, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. I too thank Danny, because I know how he keeps an eye on things and does extra things that we don't see, like when I ring him about the full bins at Whirinaki Beach and he deals to those. Just want to mention, Danny, that our bin could probably do with a empty this week, please.
Yep, good as gold.
Good on you, Sue. Danny, a question from me. I see with Estelle you're going to give a percentage for the Napier City Council to help pay. Any idea what kind of percentage you'd look to get out of them?
As a percentage of what cost, or?
Yes, of the cost. You said you're going to get a cost from the Napier City Council.
Oh, yeah, look, I haven't had any more dialogue with the community up there, so they haven't been in touch to talk about where a potential site would be, so therefore there's no real discussion with Napier City Council as yet. Based on the amount of residents, it's probably split 50-50 with the Bayview community and the Estelle community around. If there was a site, I would see it as probably a 50-50 split in costs to set the site up and maintain it and service it, just to ballpark it. But then we'd have to work it. I mean, it would be very hard one to quantify, but it would be dependent on the site.
Yep. Oh, I'm jumping the gun a bit there, sorry. Okay, any more questions for Danny? No? Well, thank you very much, Danny, for all the work you do for us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Who would like to move the report of the Rural Community Recycling Facilities update? All got their hands up. Sophie, seconder. Sue, thank you. All for?
Aye.
All up. Good. None against. Carried. Thank you very much, Danny.
Thank you.
All right, the next item. This one we might have a bit of debate about. The dog control fees. John, are you there? No, John? Here he comes. Welcome, John.
Good afternoon.
Hi. Like to give us your report?
Yes, quite a few different options in the report. As you probably saw through the workings, one of the anomalies with any sort of formula is trying to make the unregistered dogs take some accountability. And at the end of the day, they cause most of the problems, but don't contribute to the fee. Unless they get caught, and then there's a bit of an exacerbated component that comes. But what we've got three different options for funding, but the first one's just basically the normal one with inflation. The second one was looking at possibly, instead of the special owner policy funding, basically the shortfall, the unregistered dogs and the urban, it was split out amongst all the remaining dog owners, so the fee remained evened out at 65 each. All there was all dogs paying an equal proportion, which worked out at about $75. The other part of the report was in relation to dog bag dispensers. And, you know, for the Rural Community Board, I can't see much benefit in rural dog owners having to pay for that, but it puts a substantial amount of money for the first year on top of every registration. But I kind of feel like it has too many negative issues as well, because it kind of conditions people to leave home without a bag, and not all reserves will have a dispenser. Therefore, they'll be ill-equipped to pick up after themselves. I just think ownership of a dog, that's part of it. When you leave home, you've got to take a bag with you. So,
Fair enough.
do I have any questions on the different funding mechanisms?
I think you will. Marcus, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Thanks. And thanks, John, for the answers to my questions via email. They were very helpful, and I think the board found them quite interesting as well. Couple of things. As we talked about via email, it might be helpful for the full council to see the doggy doo-doo bag thing split out just across urban and SOP dogs, because I don't think we'll find much support for it in the rural area, with dogs that won't necessarily see parks or anything like that in their lives. As a discussion point, I think we've been talking a little bit within ourselves around how the funding for your program works, or for the dog control activities work, with the issue being that, you know, unregistered dogs do cause most of the financial burden, and how to reduce the financial burden on everyone else. We've been talking about the issue being that the more expensive registrations become, the less likely people are to be registered, and which would increase the cost on people who are still legitimately registering their dogs, and spreading that cost, unfortunately, on to responsible dog owners. I think that is a problem that we've got already in the rural areas, with, you know, not necessarily all the dogs being registered, and I'm sure it's the same in urban. And so I think we've got an issue coming up between the SOP registrations becoming more popular, and therefore more and more people getting a discount without the expenditure coming down as a result. Would you have any comment on the efficacy of the SOP program?
Yeah, I've always struggled with the SOP, because what you've got to do, you've got to show that you've got 2 years of a clean record. You know, your dog's got to have been registered on time and not subject to any complaints. But what I found right at the beginning was when a person comes in to register their dog, and they've probably owned a dog for 40 years, and they've just moved into the district, well, they don't qualify for the SOP. So you kind of alienate them straight away by saying, well, sorry, you need to come back in 2 years. But they've owned a dog and been a responsible owner for a long time. So I've always felt that if everyone paid the fee, or went on to the special owner policy, and if they proved not to be responsible, they can always be taken off, rather than penalising them before they even start. So I think it's always good, because if you've got an incentive, people will modify their behaviour, obviously, you know, to get that incentive. But in saying that, you know, the majority of dog owners are very responsible. And also, one of the other things I think it's important to recognise is that just dog ownership in the Hastings district, I would say it's very compliant and very super efficient. I just looked today at the National Dog Database, and the average registration throughout New Zealand is 87.4%. Hastings is currently sitting at 98.3%. So we've got really good compliance, which kind of spells out that we've got fairly effective dog control and a lot of self-regulation. Now, I honestly believe that if you do have good compliance, then you have anywhere between 3 and 7% of the unknown dog population that's out there unregistered. And the smaller that number is, the least amount of problems you have. If you have ineffective dog control, and that is those ones that are sitting around 87% compliance at the moment, you'll have anywhere between 8 and 15% unknown dogs out there causing a lot of the problems, which is triple your work. So I think in regards to non-compliance with registration, if we had the benefit of being able to go around and find out who's got unregistered dogs and penalise them as a result, we would probably make more money, which would be more evenly spread across everybody. But I guess at the end of the day, the problem with the SOP is that they are your responsible dog owners. So you don't want to be, you want to acknowledge them, but you don't want to be investing too many of your resources in them rather than concentrating on the ones that really do cause the problem. So unfortunately, we always have to focus on the unregistered dogs because 46% of the dogs impounded, unregistered. From some other research that I've done throughout New Zealand, I was collating dog bite statistics for many years. 32% of those were coming in from unregistered dogs. So it's quite clear, and we're still getting that same figure here. 32% of the reported dog attacks are dogs we didn't even know existed. So it's always tricky. I think it's good to have the incentive, but you don't want to waste too much time on it.
Good, thanks, John. Tanya, you've got a question?
Only if Marcus has finished.
I've got a few more things to ask, but
do you want to come back?
Yeah.
Thanks for that description there, John. The other thing we were debating a little bit earlier was when it comes to how we pay for our dog registration or for our dog enforcement, whether or not the benefits of dog enforcement are felt by the wider community and all the costs are carried by people who register their dogs. And so, for example, if I'm living in town and I've got a cat, I benefit quite a lot from your dog enforcement policies, managing stray dogs and people who don't look after their dogs properly and impounding stray dogs and so on and so forth, but I don't pay anything towards it. We are, in effect, punishing those responsible dog owners who will register their dogs and, look after their dogs for the actions of people who aren't captured in that system. And as a suggestion, I'd like to float the idea that perhaps the wider community, perhaps through rates, should possibly be paying more towards the dog enforcement than is currently the case, which might also reduce the cost of dog registration, but that might be just a suggestion or a comment.
Through you, Mr. Chair, they currently pay, it's a 27-73 split. So public-private benefit. So that was originally through the funding policy. So the community pays 27% of the process through a rate subsidy.
Would you feel that level is appropriate, or just as a open question?
That's probably more of an elected member's decision, because at the end of the day, some strongly feel that, well, they don't contribute to the problem, so why should they pay? And whereas others think, well, they get a benefit from it, so perhaps they should pay. So it's about getting that balance right. There are some councils that have a higher public component, but there's also some that have quite a bit lower.
Yeah, thanks, John. Tanya, question?
Yeah, I just was going to follow up in that same space as well. John, just taking the politics out of it and looking at 5.5, That's the only information I've got really regarding, or 5.2, which one, I'm not sure. Really looking at the costs and going, how much of it is actually providing a service to the public? Is it about 27%? Is it about 50%? Is it 2%? So not asking a political question, but actually a question around where the costs are driven from, because if the majority of the costs are driven by unregistered dogs, the benefit of getting those dogs either registered or off the street must be for the community good, or else we wouldn't be bothering.
Yes, I agree. I think the probably haven't done this exercise for a long time, but when we did it way back, probably 15 years ago, it was about 70% of the complainants didn't own a dog. So the people that generally complain and want the service are non-dog owners.
Tanya?
Just following up on that, John, do you know if we've done a Section 17A review on this area of council in the last few years?
Yes, we did one, but it might be a while now. It might have been 2017.
Through you again, Mr. Chair, could I ask that a copy of that get shared with the Rural Community Board? I would certainly be interested in looking at it to understand whether it's appropriate for us to ask if council would consider another Section 17A review, because I think that's probably the study that might answer the public good ratepayer funding portion. Sorry, John, I can't see your face because we're operating on Zoom, but is that a direction that you would support?
Yes, I don't have any problem with that at all.
I just see Craig's had his hand up. Craig, can you help us out there?
Just apologies for lateness, Chair. What we can do is also check to see when that is actually up for review, because there's a time frame in which they must be redone by, and it's probably coming up in the next year or so. Also, I'll just touch base with Bruce just to check the time frame, because it might be not far away.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Tan?
Just on that, through you, Mr. Chair, back to Craig, would it be okay if we did a recommendation to council to consider a Section 17A review? Obviously, council can pick that up or not as they wish, but saves us parking it for another 3 months or 6 months.
Absolutely fine for you to recommend to council to progress that. It's probably useful when you give a rationale, and that way they can pick it up and run it.
Jack, have you got something to comment there?
Yep. Sorry, my computer is playing up. Give me a second. Yep. Sorry, just question. My understanding is probably Section 17 review is more like as on the service delivery rather than a public-private benefit question. So I could be wrong. So I think looks like that question is more like a rating question, a public-private benefit rather than Section 17 review question.
Okay, who can find that out for us?
I can tell you that Mr. Panu is correct. The Section 17A is to review the nature of the service being provided and whether it's necessary, so in terms of scope, and what are the different ways of delivering that service. And there was particular emphasis when that piece of the Act was written around looking to do you carry on doing it alone? Do you outsource? Can you do it in partnership with your neighbours? So it is around what is the service and how do you deliver it? In terms of an allocative model, in terms of where one group may pay more than another group, that's definitely a rating review type work.
Okay. All right, so you've got your hand up? You're on silent.
I've got a question for John. It was regarding 4.4. He mentions staff need to patrol in pairs if there's a risk of threat from public or gangs, how often does that happen? And how much does that impact on your daily work?
That happens very, very frequently. There are areas now where staff either don't go or only go with police. Confrontation in the animal control field, well, all enforcement fields, you're starting to see it reported throughout the papers and that as well, where you're having mass parking wardens walking out on the job because of the increase in aggression. It's just, it's always been something that's always been getting slightly worse all the time out there. But I think perhaps with a nudge from COVID, people are seem to be a lot less tolerant and a lot quicker to fly off the handle. So they do need to go in pairs quite frequently.
So that's an impact on finances again, isn't it?
It is. It's a halving of productivity if you've got two people doing a one-person job. But yeah, again, it's the community that's causing that problem, not necessarily the dog owners.
Yeah. Thank you.
You've got any more questions for John? John, we've got heaps. John, I'll just come in with one. One I hear a lot from the farmers is, what do we get for our registration as a farmer?
Well, we maintain a register, which means, as a requirement under the legislation, which means that if you make a complaint, we can hopefully locate the offending dog owner. That certainly helps. We do regular patrols. We will investigate complaints of stock worrying. I think it must be about 2 years ago, we invested about 30,000 in legal fees for prosecuting dog owners for stock attacks. Impounding of dogs, complaints investigation and processing unregistered dogs. As you may have seen from one of the answers I gave you back there in regards to the proportion of unregistered dogs at the 1st of August, that's always a good health check, because it shows before any enforcement action how compliant the community's been all by themselves without us interfering. So you're talking self-regulation. And that proportion of unregistered dogs is as high in the rural area as it is in the urban area. Not for the SOP dogs, though, that was quite a bit lower, obviously, because they're your model dog owners that are going to comply. So still, yep. And in terms of the unregistered dogs that we find out there through that health check, we do find that 1/3 of those will be gone, 1/3 of them would have died, and 1/3 of them will just simply not be registered.
And just kind of follow up from that, who checks that the farmers, is it just an honesty thing that the farmers, how many dogs they own, or do you actually go and physically check how many dogs they own?
If they haven't re-registered dogs, we will go and visit them. If a farmer's just registered 6 dogs and then the next time round they've registered 5 and one's dropped off, we have to rely on the fact that they've given us correct information. Unless we've got a complaint or a reason to go there, we need to rely on them. We just don't have the manpower to go and check on every farm.
Okay, thank you. Marcus.
Hey, I just had a question around what you see the relationship between the cost of registrations and people not registering or not re-registering their dogs. Because obviously as the cost comes up, people are probably less likely to register their dogs. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I think it's important. Under the legislation, it says that the fee shall be set for what it costs for the control of dogs in your district. But at the end of the day, you've got to try and get the balance right. This urban fee that is creeping up each year, it was a lot higher when I first got here, and we probably had more non-compliance. So you've got to get the balance right, and it's exactly the same with the impounding fees. If your impounding fees are too high, people won't claim their dog, but they'll just simply get another one. So it is important to try and get that balance right. And I think when you compare it with other fees around the country, we're probably in the top, but just above halfway. So we're not extravagant.
And just another question on that, along those lines. Would a lowering of the fee, you believe, lead to more dogs being registered?
It's a tricky one. I don't believe so, because I don't think our fee is that high, even the rural one.
Thank you.
All right, Tanya.
John, I'm intrigued in why we can't identify and pull out working dogs. So the way I'm looking at, we have these different categories: urban, rural, selected owners, special dogs. Yet I'm told that it's too hard, or it's not in the legislation. To me, a hunter or a heading dog are quite clearly working dogs. They're tools of the trade. And as the mum of a young shepherd who's going to end up, I can see, having 6 or 8 dogs, the fee becomes cumulative and becomes oppressive, and I can see that choices will be made later on whether to register them all. But really intrigued, why can't we identify and pull out and separately charge fees for what I call true working dogs that really are tools of trade, not a family pet or a companion or a choice to have? My son can't work without dogs, but I can operate as a family without a pet dog.
Yes, so under the legislation, a working dog is a dog that's used solely or predominantly for herding animals. So that's a Chihuahua, a poodle, or it doesn't specify any particular breed. If it was as simple as it being a huntaway or a heading dog, then that would be fine. It'd be easy. But everyone can claim that their dog is predominantly a working dog, and then you've got to determine if that's the case. And when I first came here, they had one complete resource dedicated to doing that, for that very purpose of separating out working dogs from rural dogs. And that comes at quite a cost.
Through you, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
There's a big part of me that thinks we can trust our community. There will be always those that try and beat around and say that their Chihuahua is a cattle dog. But the reality is, I just think we can trust our community more, that those dogs that are registered as huntaways and heading dogs are actually working dogs. And if somebody has another breed that they want to say is a working dog, then I think a very simple application that they have to sign and say, yeah, my Chihuahua is a cattle dog. I just think there's potential ways around it without simply going, it's too hard, it's too big. And to hear that it would take a whole resource, that is concerning. So I do understand your reticence around putting costs into trying to uphold a policy that at the time obviously wasn't working.
Thanks, Tom. So you got a question?
Gisborne District Council has breed huntaway or heading dog for registration, just as a matter of interest. But what I wanted to ask was that $30 that was spent on, I'm assuming, taking people to court or whatever, did you get anything out of it? Is that referring to all that worrying that went on around Bridge Parr a couple of years ago, where I know a horse was worried, my son's Foxy was killed, and sheep were worried? Was that incident?
That's, for us, that's an ongoing thing. So it just depends on the degree on a particular year. But the year that you're talking about, that was the big one where we had a number of them. A lot of times there's a reasonable reparation ordered for the stock owner. We always have to pay lots to the lawyer. The only one that really doesn't get anything out of it is council, other than providing the service. So it's a bit of a shame, but I mean, at the end of the day, when there's been a reparation order of 10,000, that the judge is not going to order a fine on top of that, because it's just too much.
Thank you.
No more questions for John? Marcus?
Yeah, sorry, just one more question. I think you vaguely answered this in the emails, but when it comes to the rural enforcement cost, you don't keep track of the breeds that are involved with them, but how much of that is actually down to farm dogs getting out and being a nuisance, and how much of it would be down to, for example, smaller block, lifestyle blocks, Labradors, that kind of thing, and how much is coming out of the urban area and into the rural area?
I probably am not really knowledgeable enough to be able to give you anything that's accurate without doing some research.
Yeah. All right.
There's a lot
Thanks,
of that
Marcus.
information is just
So
not
is your
kept.
hand up, or you just got to take it down? So you've got your hand up. Is that a question? No? Okay. Okay, guys, so no further debate. It's quite a topic for us. So we've got this in 4 parts. Tan, you might have to help me out here, or Vicky. Do we vote for each A, B, C, and D? Yes, Tan?
What I think you do is, just before we do the voting, ask somebody if they have got a set of recommendations, and then once you've got that set of recommendations, then go through them piece by piece.
Okay.
So
Has anyone got a set of recommendations for me? Marcus, thank you.
I do. Some are separate to what we've got here, and some are part of that. So my recommendations would be that, as an addition to what we have here, that the Rural Community Board recommends that Council would A, review the ongoing benefit of the selected owner program, and B, reviews the public good or rates contribution to the dog control. And C,
consider.
Yeah, consider a Section 17A review of the program and how it's funded.
Okay, well done, Marcus. Do we vote on that first, or do we vote? Yes, Tan?
Marcus, have you got a recommendation based on the paper? So we had some choices of A, receive the report, B, and B gave us three options.
3 choices. Yep.
Right, in that area, I would say A, receive the report is obviously yes. B, I think there is a lack of support in the rural community for cross-subsidizing and increasing the costs on them. So I think the first option, I, would be the chosen one.
So B1.
B1 and C1, with the suggestion that council reviews it based on the cost to urban and SOP dogs.
May I clarify? So C1 would read that the board does not support dog do bag dispensers, but if council wish to proceed, that it be funded by urban dogs only. Vicky, did you get that?
And then with D, fees increased by inflation, yes, be happy to support that.
Okay, so Tanya.
And through you, Mr. Chair, picking up on Mr. Thu's recommendation, I do think at the end of all of those recommendations, we need to have the reasons. So Vicky, hopefully you can capture these. And so for the reasons of increased costs, so this is our logic for what we've suggested. For the reasons of increased cost due to public confrontation and the need to patrol in pairs, due to the number of unregistered dogs, noting these dogs, I'll just get my wording right with this one, noting this category of dogs causes the highest number of issues. Not every dog owner pays fees. Ongoing increases in fees may cause a reduction in compliance. Full stop. I'm not sure if the community are happy, community board's happy I've captured all of the reasons, or are there other reasons?
And just one other thing to add to that, that the benefit of the dog control program is felt by the wider community, including non-dog owners, and the appropriateness of the funding being mostly derived from dog owners who don't cause as many issues or something.
Well done.
Cool. We got all that, Vicky? She's writing furiously. Yep.
Yes, I have.
Brilliant. Thank
Yes,
you.
I have.
Yes.
Oh, so I was going to say, while Vicky's speaking, can I just clarify a couple of things? Is that all right?
Yep. Sure, Sophie.
I wasn't quite sure that we agreed that a section 17A review would give us the answers that we wanted. Jag and Adam both spoke to that. Are we clear that actually the assessment done in that will be helpful for this discussion?
I think we just thought we'd consider it rather than go for it. Marcus, did you have a comment?
I thought it was more that we don't meet very often, and so kicking it down the road for the next community board meeting might be a bit far, and just pointing the council in that direction may be helpful.
Yes, and I understood that, but I was just checking that it actually, the section 17A was going to give us the information that we required. I mean, Adam, Craig spoke to that, or Tanya, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
It needs to be done every 6 years, so let's just include it, and we're just asking council consider it. It's just really flagging it. We're not telling council, we're just asking.
Okay. Just one more question, Chair, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
I think in that justification of or our reasoning behind it, I think that figure that that John, you gave around that 30% of the complaints around dog issues are from non-dog owners. I just feel like that's quite a significant impact on that part of our community. So I don't know if you wanted to include that somehow in the reasoning.
Yes.
Anyone think that's useful? Yeah.
Yep. I think it might have been 70% of complaints were from non-dog owners. Yeah. Or perhaps John could clarify.
John?
That's correct, 70. But it'd be a worthwhile exercise to do again.
Did you know what percentage was it, John? Do you remember?
70.
It was 70. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tanya, you another comment?
Yeah, I just absolutely support that. And because this is going to council next week, I'm wondering if, Sophie, you could work with John around these reasons to make sure that we get, and with Vicky, with the minute taker, that we get this data and these facts correctly laid out as to the reasons why the community board is putting the recommendations through.
Cool. I see you had your thumbs up, Sophie. Thank you for that. Awesome. Okay, so should we move all those recommendations in one go? Yes. Okay, who'd like to move all those recommendations? Marcus? Do we have a seconder? Sue? Okay, all four?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. It's quite a topic. Thank you, John. Thanks for all the work you do.
Thank you.
We move on to item 7, which is Rural Transportation Activity Report through Adam.
Thank you. Hopefully everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, I'll take the report as read. There is a recommendation over and above the usual, and I'll talk a little bit to that. I'm not sure if Anu is online. I haven't seen her. No.
Yes, she is.
Oh, she is?
Yes.
Anu, do you want to talk about your, either Anu?
These reports not coming next week. So it's not coming next week, it's Monday.
I see her picture. Are you there, Anu?
Yeah, sorry, hold on. I tried to unmute and then knocked off a whole wooden spoon on my table. Sorry.
You want to talk to your part of the report, Anu?
Yep, can you hear me still?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So Tanya asked me to do a bit of a progress report on the bridge strengthening program while we were here. So in terms of my what's written in the report, it's about the 2 bridges that have been tendered, but I'll get to it in my presentation, which doesn't have a lot of slides, but hopefully this lets me share my screen. Give me 1 minute. Okay, how do I share my screen? Okay. Okay. Oh, come on, computer. Can you see that?
No.
No.
Oh, where are we?
Do you just want to talk to it?
Oh,
here we go.
I'm sure I can get it to work. Can't be that hard.
We can see your beautiful beach.
Here we go. Right.
Here you go.
Away.
All right, cool. So I just wanted to note before we start, this is where we started from. So this is our bridge restrictions that we put on place. All the blue dots are posted bridges. So in 2017, when we started, this is what we had. And we had a lot more, actually. This was updated for the last year performance. And from there to here, we have removed restrictions, and we've got restrictions down to about 184 kilometers. And this is also last year. So we have done a whole bunch of work, especially in Risington. So we have removed quite a bit. And our after, it's cut off here a little bit. Our after is about 5 kilometers of the whole network that we are trying to reduce it down to. And in terms of our HPMV, we are going from this picture here to this picture here. We've got Taihape Road in here, and over here we've got Pupati Tree and Waipanga, and a couple of roads up here, as well as Waimarama, which is yet to go. So what is completed? We have fully completed 65 bridges, that is evaluations, and if it needed further investigations, investigated those, and if it failed still, we went to design and construction, and we've completed full 65 of them. We have further done 19 bridges that have gone through the first rounds of evaluations. So in terms of our program, the first round of evaluation for all of our bridge program is complete. So what we have now with the 19 bridges is the next investigations to go. And since the beginning of the program in the end of 2017, with the 2018 LTP coming forward, we have removed 13 bridge restrictions so far, and we removed 4 this January as well. And so this is for the rest of the program what we have to do. We've got 18 more structures currently undergoing designs and further investigations, as I mentioned. We have included 2 evaluations which weren't in the program in the begin with, but I think doing them will make a good sense if we don't have to upgrade those bridges. So I'm including them. Those are Matapiro and Hogan's in Waiha Road. We have 10 more restrictions in the works that needs to be removed. In terms of designs that are getting done in this financial year, I've got Peach Gully, Kaiwaka, Arapanui Low Level, Ross's, Awanui, Lambs Hill, and couple more that are underway as well. But they are not ready to be done by June, end of this June. In terms of the constructions this financial year, I've got Tower and He's that have been awarded, and we expect work on site on March. So the risks to the whole program that I can see is, as noted by Adam and everybody else in the previous meetings, cost escalations. We have originally said 10.5 million for the whole program. We are still currently, under budget and tracking well, but I'm expecting it will blow out of that 10.5 million at some stage. And currently the lead time for materials have really impacted some of my programs and how we do it. Like for He's and Tower, as soon as we pretty much award the tender, we have to get the materials ordered just to keep, just to get the lead times risk out of our scope, really. Yeah, those 2 are the 2 main risks, and that's where we are today. So.
Thanks, Anu.
Cool. I'm gonna stop sharing now. Okay, cool, that worked.
Thanks, Anu.
Right. Questions flying in. Tanya.
Thank you, Anu. I'm really interested in the communication with the localised communities around these bridges. Mm-hmm. And just would like to reinforce the importance of liaising with the local community board member to make sure that we're communicating in the right way to the right people at the right time.
Yeah. I think in terms of Tower and He's Gorge, they are affecting they are not affecting big areas or landowners because they are pretty much end of the road, even though they are very big, they are servicing very big pieces of land blocks. And in terms of the Tower Bridge, I have a relationship with Dana Cook, one of the owners down there for since we have the restrictions going up. So I think it was quite easy to deal with her because I knew the people that was living there. Mm. And in terms of the He's Gorge, Sue's put me in contact with the landowners there. So I have ongoing communications with them. And one of the things that I have mentioned to them was I've given them a time period. This is potentially where we will be shutting the bridge for the construction works. But I have told them once we have all the lead times, confirmed with the contractor, I'll come back to them. Currently, we are in that, we've just awarded the contract. So we are currently in that process.
Thank you, Anu. And through you, Mr. Chair, may I ask another question?
Yes, sure.
The risk of cost increases and lack of materials and delay, because this program is debt funded, is it going to have a significant impact on our rating requirement, or has that been factored in and will not be a big impact?
I think to answer that question fully, I have to talk to Campbell from our accounts to do some numbers for me. But in terms of yes,
could you do that and email a response back to the Rural Community Board? That would be really appreciated.
Okay, I can do that.
So Anu, I've got probably a similar question. With the funding cut from Waka Kotahi, do you get your chunk of money for your bridges, or does Adam grab it first?
In terms of Waka Kotahi, I think I was lucky that they continued on with the bridge program, so they are supportive of the strengthening of the bridges. But in terms of Adam's money, I think that's more of maintenance and renewals. Yes. So yeah, not so much.
I can talk about that in my in item 7.
Okay, thanks, Adam. No further questions for Anu? No, thank you very much, Anu.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anu. So I'll just go through the last few parts of my report. So item 5 is where I have a recommendation. When Sean was here last meeting, he spoke about the NESPF and how there were amendments being considered. It was meant to have an annual review, but I think they're still going through its initial review, and we're into the 5th year of it. So there's outcomes, unintended outcomes of the NSPF on what happens, and also what our regulatory team consider we can do potentially in future, and those are around the notification periods and also the use of forestry quarry material. So what I've asked is that the RCB recommend that Council submit a proposal to the Ministry of Primary Industries to allow our district plans to request increased advance notice, and also to allow forest quarry aggregate to be used on our roads. Any questions on that?
Yeah, Tony's got one.
Thank you, Adam. Completely support you on this. I'm actually wondering if we can make that recommendation a little bit more robust, adding in strongly recommends, and also adding in a recommendation that it be taken to Zone 3, which is to the community board members. That's our local bunch of local government as we cut up New Zealand into zones. I think it would be a good idea that that got taken both via the community boards and also via Zone 3 Council. So question back to Vicky, are you able to change that recommendation to include those, please?
Yes, I can do that, Councillor Kerr.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya.
Any other questions on item 5?
No questions? No.
Cool. So the item 6 is just to inform the Rural Community Board of the contract extension. Fulton Hogan have been offered, and they have accepted a 1-year extension through to the end of June next year, which allows us a good period of time to undertake our procurement for the next contract. Item 7. Yep. No. Item 7 spoke about a little bit about earlier about program risks. So I was asked just to put in this report some of those risks, and obviously I'm only one person impacted, and these risks are across our entire transportation portfolio. So the major risks are obviously our 25% reduction in funding that Waka Kotahi have given us, compounding the problems that gives us is an increase in escalations that we currently see and we would expect to see going forward. And then over and above the escalations is the true cost increases, which get realised when we put out contracts. Culvert pipes and steel costs are currently 30 to 50% increased since about 18 months ago, and labour costs also are in around the 20% mark compared to about 18 months ago. So they have those items just compound the problem that we are facing with having a 25% reduction in funding from Waka Kotahi. Now, the question that often gets asked, well, what are we going to do, and how are we going to cope? And it's not just one item that gets chopped to cope. It is across the board. All of the activities that we do, we needed all of that $89 million. So every $1 million that we're short, we have to choose to do less activity. And it's generally based on how do we keep our assets alive still with the amount of money that we have, doing less new activity and spending more on trying to protect what we have. We were asked to prove to NZTA that we needed that $89 million. We feel that we did that, but it's unfortunate that we haven't received the money to actually look after our assets.
Is that nationwide? Has everyone had their budget cut?
I can't comment on every single council. Some councils got what they asked for because they didn't ask for a lot more money. They weren't able to put probably the effort that was required and to justify and prove that they needed a whole lot more money, so they didn't do it. We did put a lot of effort into it. We did a lot of modelling. We knew that we had been underfunded for quite a long time leading up to this LTP submission, and we felt that we had put together a very good business case supporting our increase. So yeah, our recommendation was a big lift from previous, but we felt we had proven that we needed that amount of money to keep our assets alive.
Yeah, it's quite disappointing because it is the lifeblood of our farm, of our rural sector.
Yeah,
our roads.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and it's everything underneath them as well. So you've got gigantic culverts put in after Cyclone Bowler that need to be replaced. And yeah, a lot of this is about, we know that there are problems that aren't just visibly seen from when you drive along the road. There are other major, it's the elephant that's in the distant elephant that we know that they exist. And so we are trying to front foot to resolve those issues, because if they all come to us in one go, we won't be able to fix it.
You've been proactive and sign of a good council. Yeah. Tanya.
Can I defer to Craig first, please?
Okay, Craig. Who wouldn't? You're on mute, Craig.
Always has to at least be one in a meeting, eh? Hey, just building on Adam's comment, probably also it is important to note, so just that 90 million is over a 3-year period, so that's not per annum. Otherwise, we'd truly be paying some spectacular rates. But also just the committee also needs to remember that council itself couldn't afford the step change in one go. So we did adopt a staged process through, but even still Waka Kotahi was short. So if this continues, the team are playing on the sides with what they can in terms of service levels. But if you reflect on the charts that Anu put up and the map of the 60 plus tonne roads, one of the scenarios, particularly the RCB might need to think about in council, is to try and minimise loadings on roads. It's actually not just the 60 tonne, but whether we actually put restrictions on some of our routes just to balance our available funds. So, for example, if you go up Kiru Road, that's where there's a number of culverts up there that Adam refers to, but more up Sue's area. But Kiru Road up there the other day, getting some firewood from right up the top. You can see the signs of all those logging trucks that could quite easily go through the forest themselves and out to State Highway 50. And whilst we've done some great work with Anu and the team strengthening the bridges, maybe we need to put a restriction on the road somehow or other that sends all those heavy loads another way.
Food for thought. Tanya?
I think there's just a few of those things that we might need to think about if the funding's not there. But obviously have to work through with our friends at the Road Freight Forum, the forestry, and so they understand why you might need to make some of those more difficult decisions in order to make your money go around.
Yeah, fair enough. Tan?
Actually, it's leads nicely on to my question, and it's how do we explain this to our community? Because without them understanding the background, they just look at us and go, well, you're only patching the patches that are patching the patch, you're not actually fixing the problem. And classic today, as I came back from Taupo, within 500 metres, there were probably 10 potholes that were being patched, when logically you would rip the whole strip up and redo the whole piece. So Waka Kotahi themselves are, as we know, patching the patches. So I think there's an opportunity for us to take this information that Adam's given us and tell our community. So my question to my colleagues is the best way to do it. Is it a rural newsletter? Do we do a series of rural meetings and include some other topics? So I'm really interested in that, and whether it's part of this agenda item or we do it informally afterwards, I'm not sure. But this point 7, program risks, that's actually really scary for me as we look forward for the next 10 years. If we've been underfunded for 10 years, what's the next 10 years going to look like? And are we going to be able to afford to maintain our roads at the level of service that our community simply expect us to? So we've got to tell them somehow.
Yep. Sophie?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Tanya. It's kind of number one risk, isn't it, for our community? The roads are the most important. I mean, I'm really interested in what you're talking about, Craig, around minimise some loading on the roads. I think if we were serious about that conversation, that might be the time, Tanya, to put that together with the communication around what's happening to our roads, the deterioration, the patching on patching, the issue with the funding, and the conversation around, you know, should we look at some of this minimising of loading and how the whole community might view the whole thing. Tanya and I also spoke with JAG around these particularly vulnerable roads. That was the email I put out. Are we going to talk a little bit about that at the end, or is that part of this conversation as well?
The vulnerability of the roads?
Yeah, the particular roads that now will be pushed back in the program because of the lack of funding, and then in 5 years are going to cost us, you know, 3 times the amount they would cost us if we could do them in 3 years, but now we can't. So I sort of feel like that conversation probably goes together with these other 2 issues.
So you must have a comment here. You got a comment here, Sue? No? Jonathan, you drive the roads when you were a bus driver?
Well, I mean, absolutely, I'd agree. We've got to maintain the roads and at least the current level. But from the point of view of the community here in Kereru and Marakakaho, the weight restriction is probably quite a significant issue, in that obviously we've got the logging trucks coming down through here, and there is the possibility that they could go through straight onto a different route, straight onto the state highway. But also, as many of you are aware, the regional council are currently looking at extracting over the next 2 to 4 years a very, very large quantity of gravel from the Narororo, and that will come out onto Kereru Road too, albeit fairly close to the Marakako community. But nevertheless, that is hundreds and hundreds of thousands of cubic meters of material, heavy material coming down the road. So certainly we've got to find a way through that somehow.
Yeah, there's also
logs
coming off Matangi Road. There's smaller woodlots all the way up Kiru Road. So it's, I think what Craig was alluding to is that there's reducing the load is one option, but there's a myriad of different options, and there's almost an endless number of scenarios and alternatives to deal with less funding that's available. And yeah, we do modelling on all of our roads to understand what the return on investment is, and also the predicted levels of service as you decrease the level of funding. So there's, and Marius can produce something for you to sort of showcase that. And it's right across the board. Like I say, it's on bridges as well as maintenance and as well as renewals and large culverts. It's not just the potholes and what you can feel being bumpy on the road.
Okay, Craig, did you have your hand up?
I put it down, Adam sort of covered it, but just also picking up from Jonathan's point in this committee's earlier discussions where there was a lot of focus on forestry, but I think that whole work piece around if someone is pulling a lot of metal out, is quarrying, is doing something that's generating more than the norm, just making sure that we're recovering more than the average in terms of fees to pay for the damage created. So just that work process, just to make sure those land use types are actually paying their fair share.
Yeah, something we're going to explore later date. Tanya.
Just listening to that conversation, I'm wondering, Adam and Craig, if it would be possible to have a short workshop on this topic so we can really understand what the options are available to us. I know, like you said, Craig, we're focused on forestry and rating options there to cover the cost, but no understanding about the damage that quarries can do very quickly on a rural road. So is a workshop a possible option? And if so, could we have that down as an action point, please?
Craig?
If you request a workshop you shall have. It's probably useful to do it in around timing with the annual plan discussion as well.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Sue. Oh, no, sorry, Sue. Marcus had his hand up first.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks. Just as a side question, when it comes to the weight restrictions on roads and when we put them on roads, is there a possible way of tying that into some kind of permitting system, as in you can take heavier vehicles across, you know, a restricted road if you have a contribution to the maintenance of that road or something along those lines, or is that just not a possibility?
There's lots and lots of rules, and our piece of string's not probably as long as we'd all like it. We'd have to have a look at that. Marcus, Jag and the team will be able to follow that through. So I'd like to be able to do a whole pile of things that central government haven't given us the ability to do, but hey, that doesn't stop us having a think about what might be a useful approach.
Yeah, it's just my reasoning behind that is just it would give also a bit of warning in terms of when logging trucks would come down certain roads or something along those lines if they had to ask to bring heavier stuff down them. But
yeah, and Adam's talked about, and I know years ago Tasman, and for example, all their unsealed roads, they had controls on when trucks could use. They had in their bylaws. I don't know if they ever got administered or not, but yeah, they basically banned heavy traffic after rain.
Yeah,
thanks, Craig. So,
I think it's really important that somehow we let the wider community know about these cost reductions and the impact that they're going to have on us going forward, because, you know, I always harp on about roads. Well, I get harped on about roads too, and all you ever get is off bloody council. What are they doing with their money? And I try to explain to people that we're doing the best with our money, but we keep getting cut from Waka Kotahi. Well, nobody's got anything pleasant to say about Waka Kotahi if you say that, but we need to make the communities understand what and why and what's going to be the issues going forward, and maybe even in that mention about user pays, etc., which won't go down very well at all, because people feel they pay their rates and they trust the council to do the best they can with them, but you can't do the best if you aren't getting the appropriate funding.
Good comment. Thanks, Sue. Adam.
Yeah, so I think to follow on from Sue, I think the brochure possibly as an outcome of the workshop would be a good way to deliver that message.
Excellent. Good outcome, guys. Righto, Adam, carry on.
Yep, so thanks. So then the last part of my report is our photo list. Sorry about bringing that in late, but there's a bit of some issues with getting them. But the photos are a usual mixture of drainage renewals, drainage maintenance, bridge maintenance, footpath maintenance, and some of our community activities with our litter and vegetation control. So it's pretty pictures, but yeah, and that's the end of my report.
Thanks, Adam. Any questions for Adam? No. Adam, just oh yeah, Tanya.
I know, just to say thank you, Adam, doing a bloody marvellous job, even if I do text you and phone you over the weekends. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, no, you're doing a wonderful job. Thanks, Adam. In trying times too. Was it a hand, Sophie? No? No? Okay. Okay, so we're going to make an amendment to strongly recommend an informed zone 3. Or is that going to be part of it? Yes, Tan?
Vicky might have the correct wording for me.
So I have got that the Hastings District Rural Community Board strongly recommends that the council submit a proposal to the Ministry of Primary Industries to request increased advance notice where forestry activity will affect areas outside of the land parcel, and to allow use of forest quarry aggregate on territorial authority roads, and that these issues be taken to Local Government New Zealand Zone 3 and community boards.
Excellent. Thanks, Vicky. Okay, well, who'd like to move the Rural Transportation Activity Report? Tanya, seconder. Thanks, Sue. All for? Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Adam. Right, Vicky, do you want to give us a representation review, please?
I really don't have any more to add than is in the paper. Happy to ask questions, but bear in mind that it is actually the Local Government Commission hearing. It's not our hearing.
Okay. Any questions for Vicky? Yes, Sophie?
Thanks, Nick. Vicky, so will we just get a Zoom link? I notice it's not in our diary. Will you just, is there a link or something we can follow to find it?
Yes. You can get a link to the Local Government Commission website, and you can watch it on there.
Will you send that or put that in our diaries, or do we just follow that?
Yeah, I'll just send that to you. Yes, I'll send it to all councillors.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No more questions for Vicky? Yes, Tanya?
Vicky, a question from me regarding this. Is there a need for Nick to represent the Rural Community Board?
No, the Commission have not asked for that, so it's...
Good. Steve, Nick.
Yeah. Stop stirring, Tanya. Okay, I think that concludes our meeting. Nothing else? No other comments? No other issues? Tanya?
You need a mover and a seconder and put this recommendation that we receive the information.
So I do. Okay, who'd like to move the representation review 2021 update? Thank you, Sophie. Seconder, Marcus. All for? Great. Against? Carried. Excellent, guys. Well, I think now it concludes our meeting. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all staff. And we will hopefully meet up in person next time. And who knows where this Omicron's going? Probably not the way things are going.
About 1,000 cases today.
1,000.
900.
As they predicted. So you got it.
I got a comment. Was in
Okay.
town in Hastings between Christmas and New Year.
Excuse me, Sue.
Yes.
I just would like to confirm, has the live streaming finished?
Yes, it's now finished.
Yeah.
Thank you.